The afternoon, I received the certified letter from the Pinewood Estates Homeowners Association in suburban Denver, Colorado. I was standing in my kitchen drinking coffee and watching snowflakes drift past my window. The envelope had that official weight to it, the kind that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Inside was a formal complaint signed by Patricia Henderson, the HOA president, informing me that my excessive fireplace usage was creating a nuisance for my neighbors and violated some obscure clause about air quality standards in our community bylaws. I read the letter 3 times, my anger building with each pass. Excessive fireplace usage. I had been burning wood in my fireplace maybe 3 or 4 times a week since winter hit hard in late November. This was January now, and temperatures were regularly dropping below 20 degrees. My fireplace was not decorative. It was a legitimate heat source that I used to supplement my gas furnace and keep my heating bills reasonable. The letter demanded that I immediately cease all fireplace usage or face fines, starting at $250 per violation. My name is Lucas Donovan, and I had lived in this cookie-cutter subdivision for 2 years. I was a 34-year-old software engineer who worked from home, and I had specifically chosen this house because it had a beautiful stone fireplace in the living room. The previous owners had even left me a cord of seasoned oak in the shed out back. When I signed the closing documents and reviewed the HOA bylaws, there had been nothing about restricting fireplace usage. I kept my copy of those original bylaws in my home office filing cabinet. I pulled out the documents and spent an hour going through every page. There was absolutely nothing about fireplaces, wood burning, or air quality standards. The bylaws covered the usual nonsense about lawn height, fence colors, and holiday decoration timelines, but nothing about how I heated my home. Someone had apparently added new rules without properly notifying homeowners or following the amendment procedures outlined in the governing documents. That evening, I drove over to my neighbor's house. Tom and Rebecca lived 2 doors down, and I had helped Tom fix his snowblower earlier in the winter. Tom answered the door in a Colorado Rockies sweatshirt, looking tired after his shift at the fire station. "Hey Lucas, what's up?" "Did you get a letter from the HOA about fireplaces?" I asked. Tom shook his head. "No, but we do not use ours, never have. Why?" I showed him the letter. Tom read it and whistled low. "That's ridiculous, man. It has been freezing. You are telling me they want to fine you for staying warm." "Apparently. Do you know who complained?" Tom glanced back into his house, then stepped outside and pulled the door mostly closed. "Look, I should not say anything, but Patricia Henderson has been on a power trip lately. She got elected president in October, and she has been making everyone's life miserable. She tried to fine the Johnsons for having their trash cans visible from the street for more than 12 hours. Mrs. Chen got a violation notice because her Christmas wreath had blue ribbons instead of red ones." "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. And here is the thing. Patricia and her husband moved into that big house at the end of Maple Court. You know, the one with the 3-car garage. Word is they paid almost $800,000 for it. She keeps talking about property values and maintaining standards. I think she sees herself as some kind of community guardian." I felt my jaw clench. "So she just makes up rules." "I do not know if she is making them up or finding obscure stuff to enforce, but yeah, she has been aggressive about it. My advice: go to the next board meeting and fight it. They meet the 2nd Tuesday of every month at the community center." I thanked Tom and drove home. The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees, and my breath fogged in the air as I walked from my truck to my front door. Inside, I went straight to my fireplace, opened the flue, and started building a fire. I crumpled newspaper, arranged kindling in a teepee formation, and placed 2 large oak logs on top. Within minutes, flames were crackling and warmth was radiating into my living room. If Patricia Henderson wanted a fight over my fireplace, she was going to get one. The next morning, I called the property management company that administered our HOA. A bored-sounding woman named Jennifer answered and put me through to the HOA coordinator after I explained my situation. "Mr. Donovan, I am looking at your file now," the coordinator said. "Yes, you received a violation notice for excessive fireplace usage." "I want to know what bylaw I am violating," I said. "I have reviewed my copy of the HOA bylaws, and there is nothing about fireplaces." The board passed an amendment in November regarding air quality and smoke emissions. All homeowners were notified via email. I never received that email, and even if you sent one, that is not proper notice for a bylaw amendment. According to Section 12 of our governing documents, amendments require a mailed notice at least 30 days before a vote, and they need approval from 60% of homeowners. There was a long pause. I will need to check with the board president about that. In the meantime, the violation notice stands. "Then I will see you at the next board meeting," I said and hung up. I burned a fire that night too, and the next night. Each morning I made sure to document my wood usage with photographs and detailed notes. If this was going to become a legal issue, I wanted records. 4 days after the first letter, I received another certified letter. This one informed me that I had accumulated 3 violations at $250 each, totaling $750 in fines. The letter threatened legal action and the placement of a lien on my property if I did not pay within 30 days. That was when I decided to do some investigating of my own. I started by taking evening walks around the neighborhood, paying attention to things I had previously ignored. Pinewood Estates was a development of about 200 homes, mostly built in the early 2010s. The houses were a mix of 2-story colonials and ranch-style homes, all in approved shades of beige, gray, and cream. The HOA maintained the common areas, including a small park, the community center, and the entrance landscaping. On my 3rd evening walk, I noticed something interesting. Patricia Henderson's house at the end of Maple Court had steam rising from a vent on the side. I had done enough home repair work to recognize the signs of a gas-powered system running hard. But there was something else, something that made me stop and pay closer attention. The ground near her foundation had a patch of dead grass even though everything else was covered in snow. And there was a faint smell in the air, something chemical and unpleasant. I walked closer, staying on the sidewalk to avoid trespassing. The smell got stronger. It was definitely natural gas. I had smelled it before when a stove pilot light went out in my old apartment. This was unmistakable. I pulled out my phone and called the gas company emergency line. Within 20 minutes, a utility truck arrived with 2 technicians. I met them on the street and explained what I had noticed. "We will check it out," the older technician said. He was a broad-shouldered guy named Frank with a weathered face. "If there is a leak, we will shut off the gas immediately. Safety first." I watched from the sidewalk as Frank and his partner used handheld detectors to check the area. Within minutes, Frank was waving urgently and pulling out his radio. His partner ran back to the truck and grabbed more equipment. Patricia Henderson came storming out of her house 5 minutes later, wrapped in a white bathrobe with her blonde hair in curlers. She looked exactly like I had imagined, probably in her late 40s with the kind of severe expression that suggested she complained to managers for sport. "What is going on here?" she demanded. "Why are you people digging around my house?" "Madam, You have a significant natural gas leak at your foundation, Frank said calmly. We are shutting off your gas immediately. This is a serious safety hazard. A leak? That is impossible. I would have smelled something. Natural gas has an odorant added to it, but in cold weather and with certain soil conditions, leaks can be hard to detect. Someone called it in and they were right. You are lucky. This could have been catastrophic. Patricia's eyes scanned the street and landed on me. Her expression went from confused to furious in an instant. You did this. This is harassment. I was walking by and smelled gas, I said simply. I did what anyone should do. I called the utility company. This is retaliation because of your violation notices. I will have you removed from this community. Frank stepped between us. Madam, I need you to focus. Do you have somewhere you can stay tonight? We are shutting off your gas and you will not have heat or hot water until we can complete repairs. Given the extent of the damage, that could take several days. That took the wind out of her sails. She stood there on her front lawn looking suddenly smaller and older. Several days, but it is freezing. I am sorry, madam. This is a safety issue. We cannot turn your gas back on until the leak is repaired and the system is inspected. I walked home feeling a mix of satisfaction and unease. I had not reported the gas leak to get revenge. It genuinely was dangerous. But the timing was certainly convenient, and Patricia clearly thought I had orchestrated the whole thing. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed, all 4 of them. I stood in my driveway in the early morning cold, staring at the ruined rubber and feeling my blood pressure spike. There was no proof it was Patricia or anyone acting on her behalf, but the timing was suspicious as hell. I called the police and filed a report. The responding officer was a young woman named Officer Martinez who took photos and notes, but was honest about the chances of finding who did it. Without cameras or witnesses, there is not much we can do, she said. Do you have any enemies in the neighborhood? I explained the HOA situation and the gas leak. Officer Martinez raised her eyebrows. That is quite a coincidence, but coincidences happen. I will include all of this in my report. You might want to consider installing a security camera. By noon, I had ordered a set of wireless cameras online and arranged for a tow truck to take my vehicle to get new tires. The whole ordeal cost me almost $800, about the same amount as the bogus HOA fines. That evening, I burned the biggest fire yet. I loaded my fireplace with 3 large oak logs and let them roar. The heat was almost too much, and I had to open a window, but I did not care. Every crackle of the wood felt like a small victory. The board meeting was on Tuesday, exactly 1 week after I received the first violation letter. I arrived at the community center at 6:45 for the 7 o'clock meeting. The room was set up with folding chairs facing a long table where the board members would sit. About 20 other homeowners were already there, chatting in small groups. Tom saw me and waved me over. Big turnout tonight, he said. Word got around about Patricia's war on you. People are talking about it. Are you kidding? This is the most interesting thing to happen in Pinewood Estates since the Millers got divorced. Everyone thinks Patricia is out of control. At 7 o'clock sharp, Patricia Henderson walked in with 4 other board members. She wore a navy blue pantsuit and had her hair pulled back in a tight bun. She looked like she was about to chair a corporate merger, not a neighborhood meeting. The other board members were a mixed group. An older retired man named George, 2 middle-aged women named Susan and Deanne, and a younger guy named Kevin who looked like he wished he was anywhere else. Patricia called the meeting to order and launched into the agenda. The first 20 minutes covered budget reports and landscaping contracts. Then she got to new business. We have had several complaints about smoke and air quality issues from wood-burning fireplaces," Patricia said, her voice crisp and officious. "The board has taken action by implementing new restrictions on fireplace usage to protect the health and property values of our community." I raised my hand. Patricia saw me but deliberately looked away. "In response to these new standards," she continued, "we have issued violation notices to homeowners who are not in compliance. These are not personal attacks. These are necessary measures to maintain our community standards." "Point of order," I said loudly, standing up. "I want to address the fireplace violations." Patricia's face tightened. "Homeowner comments come at the end of the meeting, Mr. Donovan. According to Robert's Rules of Order, which you claim to follow, I can challenge a board action at any time during the meeting. I am challenging the validity of these fireplace restrictions." A murmur went through the crowd. Patricia's face flushed red. "You are out of order." "No, you are out of order," I said, and I heard several people chuckle. "You implemented a bylaw amendment without following the proper procedures." Section 12 of our governing documents clearly states that amendments require written notice mailed to all homeowners at least 30 days before a vote, and approval from 60% of homeowners. You did neither. You sent an email, which half the people here probably never saw, and you never held a vote. Your fireplace restrictions are invalid, and any fines based on them are unenforceable. The room erupted in conversation. George, the older board member, leaned over and whispered something to Patricia. She shook her head sharply. "The board has the authority to implement reasonable rules," Patricia insisted. "We do not need homeowner approval for every minor policy." "Restricting how people heat their homes is not a minor policy," I shot back, "and you do not have unlimited authority. You are bound by the governing documents just like everyone else." Susan, one of the other board members, cleared her throat. "Patricia, maybe we should table this discussion and review the amendment procedures. I am not sure we followed the correct process." "We followed the process perfectly," Patricia snapped, "and I will not be intimidated by a homeowner who thinks he can do whatever he wants without consequences." "I am not doing whatever I want," I said. "I am using my fireplace to heat my home during winter, which is a normal and reasonable thing to do. You are the one making up rules and harassing people who question you." "Harassing? You are the one who harassed me by calling the gas company to my house." The room went silent. I smiled slowly. "I called the gas company because I smelled a dangerous gas leak near your house. They found a significant leak that could have caused an explosion. I potentially saved your life and the lives of your neighbors. If you consider that harassment, I think that says more about you than it does about me." Patricia looked like she wanted to climb over the table and strangle me. "You are just mad because you got caught violating community standards." "What community standards?" "The made-up ones you invented without proper authority." "I have been documenting everything, Patricia. Every fire I have burned, every communication from the HOA, every conversation. If you want to take this to court, I am ready. And while we are at it, I will file a countersuit for harassment and abuse of authority." George stood up. "I think we need to take a recess. This is getting out of hand." "No recess," Patricia said. "Mr. Donovan needs to understand that he cannot just do whatever he wants." "Neither can you," someone shouted from the back of the room. I turned and saw Mrs. Chen, the woman Tom had mentioned who got dinged for her Christmas wreath. "You fined me $100 because my wreath had blue ribbons." "Blue? What kind of ridiculous rule is that? My trash can was out for 14 hours instead of 12, another voice called out. It was Mr. Johnson. "You fined me $200 for being 2 hours over your arbitrary limit." More voices joined in. The meeting dissolved into chaos as homeowner after homeowner stood up to share their grievances with Patricia's reign as HOA president. It turned out I was not the only one who felt targeted and harassed. Patricia had been on a violation spree, issuing fines for increasingly petty infractions. Patricia tried to regain control by banging a gavel, but the room was too riled up. Kevin, the younger board member, leaned back in his chair and whispered to Deanne, who nodded. George was already gathering his papers. Finally, George stood and spoke in a booming voice that cut through the noise. I move that we suspend all violation notices issued in the past 3 months, pending a full review of our bylaw amendment procedures and the validity of recently implemented policies. Second, Susan said immediately. Patricia looked betrayed. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious, George said. Patricia, you have been issuing fines without proper board discussion or homeowner input. Half of these violations are based on rules that were never properly adopted. We are exposing the HOA to massive legal liability. I vote yes on the motion, Kevin said. Yes, Deanne added. Yes, Susan confirmed. George nodded. That is 4 votes in favor. Patricia, you are outvoted. All current violations are suspended. Patricia stood up so fast her chair fell backward. This is mutiny. I am the president of this board, and you serve at the pleasure of the board and the homeowners, George said calmly. I suggest you take some time to review the governing documents and understand the limits of your authority. This meeting is adjourned. Patricia grabbed her papers and stormed out. The community center buzzed with conversation and laughter. Several people came up to shake my hand or pat me on the back. Tom gave me a big grin and a thumbs up. Mrs. Chen, a tiny woman who barely came up to my shoulder, grabbed my hand with surprising strength. Thank you for standing up to her, she said. She has been making our lives miserable. I just want to use my fireplace, I said honestly. It is more than that, Mr. Johnson said, joining us. She thinks she can run this neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. Someone needed to push back. I drove home that night feeling vindicated but also exhausted. Standing up to bullies was tiring. Even when you won over the next few days, life started to return to normal. I burned fires in my fireplace without worrying about violation notices. My security cameras arrived, and I spent an afternoon installing them around my property. The footage would be stored in the cloud, so I would have evidence if anyone decided to vandalize my property again. Patricia, meanwhile, seemed to have gone quiet. I did not see her at the grocery store or driving around the neighborhood. Her house remained dark most evenings, and I assumed she was staying somewhere else while the gas repairs were completed. 2 weeks after the board meeting, I got a call from George, the older board member. He asked if he could stop by to talk, and I agreed. He showed up that afternoon carrying a folder full of documents. I wanted to update you on the situation, George said as we sat in my living room. The board has been doing a deep dive into Patricia's activities as president, and we have found some disturbing things. Like what? Like the fact that she hired her brother-in-law's company to do landscaping work at inflated prices without getting competitive bids. Like the fact that she approved expenditures beyond her authority without board votes. Like the fact that she has been collecting violation fines and depositing them into an account that does not appear in our official records. I sat up straighter. Are you saying she was stealing from the HOA? We do not have proof yet, but it looks suspicious. We have hired a forensic accountant to review the books. If she was embezzling, we will have grounds to remove her from the board and pursue legal action. Does she know you are investigating? Not yet. We wanted to have our facts straight first. But Lucas, I also wanted to apologize. The board should have been paying closer attention. We let Patricia run wild because most of us did not want to deal with the administrative work. That was a mistake, and it put you and other homeowners in a terrible position. I appreciated the apology, but I was more interested in the investigation. What happens if you find evidence of embezzlement? We turn it over to the police and the district attorney. Theft from an HOA is a serious crime in Colorado. She could face felony charges. George left after about an hour. I sat in my living room as the winter sun set outside, thinking about how a simple desire to use my fireplace had uncovered what might be a significant fraud. 3 weeks later, the other shoe dropped. The forensic accountant's report confirmed that Patricia had been diverting HOA funds into a personal account. Over the course of 18 months, she had stolen approximately $63,000 through a combination of fake vendor invoices, inflated service contracts, and unauthorized fine collections. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president and turned the evidence over to the Denver County District Attorney's Office. I learned about this from a letter mailed to all homeowners explaining the situation and assuring us that the board was taking steps to recover the stolen funds and prevent future fraud. The letter also announced that all violations issued during Patricia's tenure were being dismissed, and any fines already paid would be refunded. 2 days after the letter arrived, I was working at my desk when my security camera alert went off. I pulled up the app on my phone and saw Patricia Henderson walking up to my front door. She looked terrible, her hair unwashed and her face drawn. She was wearing sweatpants and a parka that had seen better days. I debated not answering, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door but did not invite her in. "What do you want, Patricia?" "I need to talk to you," she said. Her voice was hoarse, like she had been crying. "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me. "Talk." "I know what they are saying about me. The embezzlement accusations. It is not what it looks like. It looks like you stole $63,000 from the HOA. I was trying to improve the community. The landscaping company I hired does excellent work. Yes, my brother-in-law owns it, but they were the best option. And the fines I collected were going to be used for community improvements. In an account only you controlled, that you never disclosed to the board or the homeowners. Patricia, that is called theft." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I made mistakes. I admit that, but I did not deserve to have my life destroyed. You did this. You called the gas company to make me look bad, and then you stood up at that board meeting and turned everyone against me." I felt a surge of anger. "I called the gas company because your house had a dangerous gas leak. I spoke up at the board meeting because you were violating my rights and harassing me. Everything that happened to you is the result of your own actions. You stole money, Patricia. You abused your authority. You made people's lives miserable because you enjoyed the power. None of that is my fault. I could lose everything," she whispered. "My husband is talking about divorce. The DA is going to press charges. I could go to jail. Then you should get a lawyer. Please. Please just tell them you were wrong about the gas leak. Tell them you made a mistake. If you do that, I can argue this was all a misunderstanding, that you were out to get me." I stared at her in disbelief. "You want me to lie and say there was not a gas leak?" "Patricia, there are utility company reports documenting the leak. There are photos. The repairs cost thousands of dollars. What you are asking me to do is insane. I am begging you, go home, Patricia. Better yet, go talk to your lawyer. Stay away from my property." I turned and went back inside, locking the door behind me. Through the window, I watched her stand on my porch for another minute before finally walking back to a car parked on the street. She drove away, and I hoped that would be the last I saw of her. It was not. A week later, I received a cease and desist letter from Patricia's attorney, claiming I had defamed her and demanding I retract statements I had made at the board meeting. The letter threatened legal action if I did not comply within 10 days. I took the letter to a lawyer of my own, a sharp woman in her 50s named Carla Murphy, who specialized in HOA disputes and defamation cases. She read the letter while I sat in her office, then set it down and looked at me over her glasses. "This is garbage," she said. "Everything you said at that board meeting was either true or opinion protected by the First Amendment. She has no case. So what do I do? Nothing. Ignore it. If she actually files a lawsuit, we will respond, but I doubt it will get that far. Her attorney is probably just trying to scare you into silence before the criminal case goes to trial. There is going to be a trial, almost certainly. The DA would not have filed charges unless they had a solid case. Embezzlement from an HOA is a Class 4 felony in Colorado if the amount is over $20,000. With $63,000, she is looking at potential prison time. Over the next few months, life in Pinewood Estates slowly returned to normal. George was elected as the new HOA president, and the board implemented new oversight procedures to prevent future fraud. The forensic accountant helped recover about $40,000 of the stolen funds from Patricia's personal accounts, and the HOA's insurance covered most of the rest. I continued to burn fires in my fireplace throughout the winter, enjoying the warmth and the small act of defiance it represented. My security cameras never caught anyone vandalizing my property again, and my tires remained intact. In April, Patricia Henderson's criminal trial began. I was called as a witness to testify about the gas leak and the board meeting, which had helped expose her misconduct. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented bank records, forged invoices, and testimony from other board members and homeowners. Patricia's defense attorney argued that she had made bookkeeping errors, but had not intended to steal. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on multiple counts of theft and embezzlement. Patricia sat silently as the verdict was read, her face expressionless. Her husband was not in the courtroom. 6 weeks later, Patricia was sentenced to 4 years in the Colorado state prison system, with the possibility of parole after 2 years. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $63,000 plus interest and court costs. The judge had harsh words during sentencing, noting that Patricia had been in a position of trust and had violated that trust for personal gain. I attended the sentencing hearing, sitting in the back of the courtroom. When it was over and Patricia was led away by bailiffs, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief that justice had been served, sadness that someone had made such destructive choices, and satisfaction that standing up to a bully had not only protected me, but had protected an entire community. That evening, I went home and built a fire in my fireplace. The wood was from a new cord I had ordered, a mix of oak and cherry that burned clean and hot. I sat in my recliner with a beer, watching the flames dance and thinking about everything that had happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom, my neighbor. The message said, "Heard about the sentencing. Justice served. Beer at my place this weekend." I texted back, "Absolutely. I will bring firewood." He sent back a laughing emoji. As spring turned into summer, the drama of the HOA situation faded into neighborhood lore. New people moved into Patricia's house after it went into foreclosure. The new neighbors were a young couple with a baby, friendly and normal. They introduced themselves by bringing over cookies, and we chatted about the neighborhood. They had heard vague stories about HOA problems but did not know the details. I gave them the short version and they laughed nervously. "Should we be worried?" the husband asked. "No," I said honestly. "The board is solid now. George is a good president. He actually cares about the community, not about power trips." The wife looked relieved. "That is good to hear. We were nervous about HOA drama." "Just pay your dues, keep your lawn mowed, and you will be fine," I said. "And if you ever have a problem, speak up. Do not let anyone push you around." They thanked me and went back to their unpacking. I watched them go, feeling like maybe something good had come out of all the chaos. That summer, the HOA organized a neighborhood barbecue at the community park. It was the first social event in over a year, and a huge turnout showed how hungry people were for normalcy. George manned the grill, flipping burgers and hot dogs while kids ran around playing tag. Tom and Rebecca were there with their teenagers. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings that disappeared in minutes. Mr. Johnson set up cornhole boards, and impromptu tournaments broke out. I spent the afternoon eating too much potato salad and playing catch with some of the neighborhood kids. It felt normal and good, the way a community was supposed to feel. No drama, no power struggles, just neighbors enjoying a nice day. As the sun started to set and families began packing up, George called for everyone's attention. He stood on a picnic table, looking slightly ridiculous but sincere. "I just want to say thank you all for coming out today," he said. "This past year has been difficult for our community. We had problems with leadership and trust, but we got through it because people were willing to stand up and demand better. I especially want to acknowledge Lucas Donovan, who refused to be bullied and whose actions helped expose serious problems. Lucas, thank you." Everyone applauded, and I felt my face get hot with embarrassment. Tom clapped me on the shoulder and grinned. "You are a hero, man. Embrace it." "I just wanted to use my fireplace," I muttered, but I was smiling. The barbecue wound down as twilight settled over the park. I helped George load the grill into his truck, and we chatted about plans for upgrading the playground equipment and possibly installing better lighting along the walking paths. Normal HOA stuff, boring and practical and important. Driving home that night, I passed the house where Patricia used to live. The lights were on, and I could see the young couple inside, the wife holding their baby while the husband assembled what looked like a crib. A normal family living their normal life, completely unaware of the drama that had unfolded there just months before. I pulled into my own driveway and sat in my truck for a moment, looking at my house. It was not fancy or special, just a standard suburban home with vinyl siding and a two-car garage. But it was mine. I had stood up for my right to live in it the way I wanted, and I had won. Inside, I went straight to my fireplace. It was warm outside, mid-70s even at night, but I did not care. I built a small fire anyway, just because I could. The wood caught and burned, filling my living room with that familiar smoky smell. I opened the windows to let in the summer breeze and stood watching the flames. My phone buzzed with an email. It was from Carla Murphy, my attorney. The subject line read, "Henderson lawsuit dismissed." I opened it and read that Patricia's defamation lawsuit against me had been formally dismissed with prejudice, meaning she could not refile it. Carla's note said, "As expected. You are completely in the clear. Congratulations on weathering the storm." I forwarded the email to my personal archive, adding it to the folder I had created documenting the entire saga. Months of letters, photos, legal documents, and correspondence, all carefully organized. I hoped I would never need to reference any of it again, but I believed in keeping good records. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No worrying about violation notices or legal threats or slashed tires. just the quiet peace of knowing I had stood my ground and come out the other side intact. The following months passed without incident. Fall arrived, and with it came cooler temperatures. I started burning fires in my fireplace again, this time without any anxiety or defiance. It was simply what I did to stay warm and enjoy my home. The first fire of the season felt particularly satisfying, and I sent a photo to Tom with the caption, "First fire of fall. No HOA drama," he sent back. "Living the dream, buddy." In October, the HOA held elections for board positions. George ran for re-election as president and won unanimously. 2 new members joined the board, both level-headed homeowners who had been vocal about wanting transparency and accountability. At the first board meeting of the new term, they passed a resolution formally apologizing to all homeowners who had been targeted during Patricia's tenure, and committing to fair and reasonable governance going forward. I attended that meeting, sitting in the audience and watching democracy function the way it was supposed to. There were discussions about budget allocations and maintenance schedules. Someone proposed organizing a holiday lights contest in December. A homeowner asked about the process for getting approval to build a deck, and the board walked through the requirements clearly and patiently. It was boring in the best possible way. After the meeting, George pulled me aside. "I wanted you to know that we are updating the bylaws to include explicit protections for fireplace usage and other basic homeowner rights. No more ambiguity that someone can exploit." "That is great," I said. "How long will that take? We are drafting the amendments now." "We will mail notices to all homeowners in November, hold a vote in December, and hopefully have the new bylaws approved by January. We are doing it right this time, following every rule and getting proper homeowner input." "I appreciate that. And George, thanks for stepping up." "You are a good president," he smiled, looking both pleased and tired. "I am too old for this kind of drama, but somebody had to do it. At least now I can focus on normal stuff like making sure the streetlights work and the snow gets plowed." Winter came hard and fast that year. By mid-November, we had already had 2 significant snowstorms, and temperatures were consistently below freezing. My fireplace became my best friend, burning almost every evening as I worked from home or relaxed after dinner. Each time I loaded wood and struck a match, I thought about how close I had come to losing this simple pleasure because of one person's abuse of power. In December, the HOA mailed out the proposed bylaw amendments as promised. I read through them carefully. The new language explicitly protected the right to use fireplaces, wood stoves, and other heating sources unless they created an actual safety hazard or violated local fire codes. There were also new sections about board transparency, spending limits, and homeowner grievance procedures. It was clear that George and the new board had learned from the Patricia situation and were determined to prevent anything similar from happening again. The vote was held at a special meeting right before Christmas. The turnout was huge, with over 60% of homeowners either attending in person or submitting proxy votes. The amendments passed with 87% approval. When George announced the results, the room burst into applause. "We have a new foundation for how our community operates," George said. "These rules protect homeowners while still allowing the board to do necessary work. It is a balance, and balance is what we need." Christmas that year was peaceful. I hung lights on my house, using only approved white bulbs to avoid any potential drama, though I suspected the new board would not have cared if I used rainbow colors. On Christmas Eve, I invited Tom and Rebecca over for drinks by the fireplace. We sat around the fire, talking and laughing while their teenagers played video games in the basement. "This is nice," Rebecca said, holding her wine glass and watching the flames. "It feels like the neighborhood is finally healing." "It took a while," Tom said, "but yeah, we are getting there." I raised my glass. "To boring HOA meetings and uneventful winters." "I will drink to that," Tom said, and we clinked glasses. The new year arrived with more snow and cold temperatures. January was brutal, with several days where the high temperature never got above 0. My fireplace worked overtime, supplementing my furnace and keeping my house comfortable. My heating bills were noticeably lower than the previous year, which was a nice bonus on top of simply enjoying the ambience of a real fire. In February, I got an unexpected piece of mail. It was a check from the HOA for $500, accompanied by a letter explaining that this was a proportional refund of recovered funds from Patricia's embezzlement. Every homeowner was getting a similar refund, based on the amount they had paid in dues during the period of the theft. I stared at the check, thinking about the absurdity of the whole situation. I had been threatened with fines and legal action for using my fireplace. I had discovered a dangerous gas leak and been accused of harassment. I had spent hundreds of dollars on slashed tires and legal consultations. And now, I was getting $500 back because the person who had threatened me was in prison for theft. Life was weird sometimes. I deposited the check and used part of the money to buy a new cord of premium hardwood for my fireplace. The wood guy who delivered it noticed my well-stocked woodshed and nice fireplace setup. "You must really like burning fires," he said as he stacked the wood. "I do," I said. "Had to fight for the right to do it actually." "Fight? What do you mean?" I gave him the abbreviated version of the story. His eyes got wider as I talked. "No way. Your HOA tried to ban fireplaces. One person on the HOA did. She does not live here anymore." He laughed and shook his head. "Man, HOA stories are always crazy. Good for you for fighting back." After he left, I stood in my backyard looking at my newly stocked woodshed. I had enough wood to last through the rest of this winter and probably into the next one. It was a comforting feeling, knowing I was prepared and that no one was going to hassle me about it. That evening I built what might have been my 100th fire of the season. The routine was automatic now. Open the flue, clear the ash from previous fires, arrange the wood, add kindling and newspaper, strike a match and watch the flames grow. Within minutes, heat was radiating through my living room and that familiar wood smoke smell filled the air. I settled into my recliner with my laptop, planning to do some work, but instead found myself just watching the fire and reflecting. A year ago, I had been stressed and angry, fighting an unjust system and wondering if I was going to lose my home over something stupid. Now I was at peace, vindicated and part of a community that had learned important lessons about power and accountability. The fire crackled and popped, and I thought about Patricia Henderson. I did not hate her, not anymore. I felt something closer to pity. She had had a position of trust and responsibility, and she had squandered it through greed and pettiness. Now she was in prison, her marriage was over, her reputation was destroyed, and she had years ahead of her to contemplate her choices. I had not set out to destroy anyone's life. I had just wanted to use my fireplace and be left alone. But when pushed, I had pushed back, and the consequences of that had rippled far beyond what I could have anticipated. It was a reminder that standing up to bullies was important not just for yourself, but for everyone they might target next. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my mother calling for our weekly check-in. "How are things in Denver?" she asked. "Good, Mom. Really good. Cold, but good." "Are you staying warm? I worry about you out there in that big house all alone." "I am staying plenty warm. I have been using my fireplace a lot." "Oh, that is nice. I remember when you bought that house, you were so excited about the fireplace." "Yeah," I said, smiling. "It turned out to be more important than I realized." We chatted for another 20 minutes about family news and holiday plans. After we hung up, I added another log to the fire and watched the flames adjust and grow around it. The new log was cherry wood, which burned with a slightly sweet smell and pretty orange flames. Outside, snow was falling again, fat flakes drifting past my windows and covering the neighborhood in fresh white. It was the kind of evening that made you grateful for warmth and shelter and the simple pleasures of home. I thought about writing down the whole story of what had happened with the HOA, maybe sharing it online or with friends as a cautionary tale. But then, I decided against it. The story was over, the lesson learned, and the community healed. Sometimes the best thing to do was let sleeping dogs lie and simply enjoy the peace that followed the storm. The winter eventually gave way to spring, and then summer, and the cycle continued. Life in Pinewood Estates became refreshingly ordinary. The HOA functioned smoothly under George's leadership. Lawns were mowed, snow was plowed, and disputes were handled reasonably. No one sent threatening letters about fireplaces or holiday decorations. The community center hosted movie nights and book clubs. The neighborhood kids played in the park without adult supervision, the way kids were supposed to. I continued to live my life, working from home, burning fires when it was cold, and enjoying the quiet satisfaction of having stood my ground. The whole experience had taught me that sometimes the biggest battles were fought over the smallest things, and that principles mattered even when the stakes seemed trivial. My fireplace, which had been at the center of so much conflict, remained what it had always been, a source of warmth, comfort, and simple pleasure. Every time I used it, I remembered what I had fought for and why it had mattered. And on cold winter nights, when the fire was burning bright and the house was warm, I would sometimes raise a glass to the idea that ordinary people could stand up to petty tyrants and win. It was not always easy, and it was not always clean, but it was always worth it. The story of Patricia Henderson and the Pinewood Estates, HOA, became one of those neighborhood legends that people told to newcomers as both entertainment and warning. The specifics got a little fuzzy over time, as stories do, but the core message remained clear. Abuse of power would not be tolerated, and anyone who tried to be a tyrant would face consequences. As for me, I was just Lucas Donovan, a guy who lived in a nice house in suburban Denver and liked to burn fires in his fireplace. Nothing special, nothing extraordinary, just someone who had stood up when it mattered and then went back to living his normal life. And really, that was enough. Years from now, when I eventually sell this house and move on to whatever comes next, I will remember the fireplace first. Not the square footage or the property value or the nice neighborhood, but the fireplace where I fought a small war and won. The fireplace that taught me about standing up for what is right, even when it is inconvenient or scary. Every home should have a fireplace, I think. Not just for warmth, but for the reminder it provides. That some things are worth fighting for, that comfort and safety matter, and that the simple act of burning wood can sometimes be an act of defiance and dignity. The fire crackled in front of me, and I added one more log, watching it catch and burn. Outside, the world continued on, indifferent to my small victory. But inside, in my warm living room with my coffee and my peace of mind, I knew that I had done something important. I had refused to be bullied. I had stood my ground, and in doing so, I had helped make my community a better place. That was worth all the stress, all the conflict, all the uncertainty. That was worth everything.